So welcome to the Redgate State of the Database Landscape survey webinar. This is our 2025 report that we just launched yesterday, actually. And so we're going to hear and talk a little bit about what we see in the report. I'm Steve Jones. I work for Redgate as an advocate, and I've been there a long time. I've been a DBA. I've been a developer. I've done a lot of things in my career, and I've done a lot of this research stuff with Redgate over the last, now 17 years. So that's me. And then joining me today is my coworker, Kellyn Gorman. Kellyn, you want to introduce yourself?
I can. My name is Kellyn Gorman. I like to say I'm the weird Oracle girl that Microsoft adopted, but I have been multi-platform for my entire career, so last 25 years. I specialize a lot more in Oracle, even though I am a multi-platform advocate at Redgate. I will be doing a lot of Oracle in the upcoming years, so you will see me over on the Oracle side.
Thank you. And we also want to welcome Mri Pandit. Mri and I have been on a number of panels over the years. So Mri, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Hey, good morning, everyone. Good morning, my time. So that's why I'm saying that. I've been associated with Redgate, have used it, and it's a great tool, and I like it personally. It makes my life easy as a database administrator. So I've worked pretty much as a database administrator now. Have been into management, so been on the database engineering side. So right now, that's
all right. Well, good. Well, welcome, and thank you. So this is our 7th year that we've run this report. So we've kind of done this annually. I think we used to try to do it ourselves. Now we've kind of farmed it out to people that are professionals at running surveys and getting things done. This year, or late in 2024, we had over 2,500 respondents from all over the globe. Responses from basically everywhere in the world, over 2,500 of them. And from that report, we came up with 4 kind of hot topics for 2025. So there's security and risk, there's the cross database issue, professional development, AI, and the cloud. And so I know one of the first things is security. Kellyn, I know this is important to you, right? That the world has become scary, right? Data breaches and stuff. And I think we were talking recently and you said some people are just getting kind of numb to it. Is that what you see?
I think they are. We get to a point where we're constantly, hearing this is just a risk. You need to get used to it. There's so many letters being received, emails being received at organization levels, personal levels, that we just kind of said, is this our day-to-day life now?
Yeah. I mean, I think, right, if Kellyn, I don't know about you, but when I hear 1 million records were lost, I don't even think much of it, right? Like it's not.
Millions small. That's small potatoes.
Millions
Yeah.
tiny.
Yeah. We were talking about this just the other day about healthcare data, Change United Healthcare, the amount of records that were, just breached at that point. Kaiser Permanente, that's a huge one as well. AT&T. I mean, how many of us are going, well, that's my cell phone provider. Well, there's my healthcare data. Well, there's my financial data. You just starting to go, do I have to share my data with anyone? I'm getting to the point, I'm just going to move to an island and keep it all to myself.
I tend to put in a decent amount of fake data on various things unless I'm legally required, precisely for that reason,
I'm with you.
Let me ask you,
fake answers. Yeah.
Yeah. You work at a financial institution. Is this something you guys talk about? Is it something that your management's scared of?
Yeah. This is the biggest thing, right? So it affects companies' reputation and everything is online, and people's trust in the financial companies, especially, right? So if your bank is saying like, "Hey, my data is like breached," then you have other things at stake. So I think that's common across all financial companies, right? So mortgages, you don't want data breaches to happen. So, but it is very common, and I mean, I have got a letter saying like my social security number was found in dark web. I mean, it is kind of scary, and it's very concerning.
Yeah, and we see that more and more. So the report showed IT leaders have some concern about protecting that sensitive data and dealing with all the regulatory compliance that they have to do. Right, like a lot of companies are now across multiple jurisdictions. And so they have all these challenges that they have to deal with. And I think that gets worse as we go to multi-platform, right? Because security and SQL Server, security at Oracle, security at Mongo, the various cloud providers is very different, right? I know, Kellyn, you work with a bunch of different platforms, right? So it's a challenge.
It's really difficult. We start talking about the challenges of understanding endpoints versus the actual networking of an organization internally. That's a massive difference for customers to embrace and understand and have those skill sets to do it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So with that, if we turn to data security, this was an interesting stat, I think, that we saw that 38% of IT teams are concerned about data security and access controls when they're trying to manage different technologies. And I think that a lot of people thought that maybe the cloud would just automatically be secure or that other platforms are just better. But we've seen a 12% increase. I know, Kellyn, we work with different customers. I hear security more and more.
And I think you should. If we start talking about, is the cloud secure? I think the cloud, there's no way to build in what the cloud has for security. But if you don't understand what's required to build a secure cloud platform, I think that's what the challenge really gets down to. If you don't understand, express route versus fast connect versus endpoints, as we talked about, that's a lot to expect of anyone.
It is, right? Like I think about the cloud has all these possibilities, but understanding it and learning about it is hard.
It is.
So, for Mri, for you, right? Like you manage people. Do you struggle with them understanding security?
Yeah, definitely, right? So with more array of technologies and multi-platform, there comes like, okay, one works for this vendor, doesn't work for the same vendor, right? So that's the thing. So how do I upskill? How do I train my folks to do the right thing? That's been the biggest challenge.
And so let me ask you this. We have this other stat. Do you have formal practices, or is it something you have to work on to implement best practices or ensure, we're zero trust, we're secure by default, all these types of things that have come out in our industry?
Yeah. I think there are governance principles and practices, especially being in finance, right? So you always have to adhere to CFPB, regulatory bodies, which the government has. But those instructions, how do you translate into technology is the challenge. And so in my current company, right? So I'm like leading a thing called as open banking initiative. So it's like, how do you adhere with the data elements being exposed, and how do you like restrict at the same time? So it's been a challenge that way. So lack of formal practices, I think it's true and not true. I feel like most of the companies have formal practices. I don't know. But it's more like human error and security vulnerabilities. That part I do agree. So.
Yeah, I mean, so I think a lot of people have these processes, but do they share them well across the organization? So, I think, Kellyn, right, for you and me, we hear people talk about best practices. We might give them something, but so often I find people, they use the term without really having a specific best practice they want to use. And it's hard to know how we share this, right?
Yeah, and for really large organizations, they may have strong security policies that aren't able to be flexible enough to get to newer technologies such as the cloud and AI. So they may say, you have to have this requirement to come into our organization and be a platform that we utilize. And then you find out that there's no way to do that because the platform is structured, or the infrastructure underneath or the services are just so different from what they've written into the policy.
Yeah. And, and if you haven't good stuff like this, I think that you are asking for trouble, right? When you allow anybody to set up a container or a bucket in S3 or add software that may have vulnerabilities, it's always amazing to me, right? Because I don't know about you, Kellyn, but I go to a lot of different clients, and so rarely is there any sort of check on my laptop when I connect to their Wi-Fi or things. Microsoft has a huge exception. Like I know if I've been a couple SKUs behind, sometimes they're like, you can't connect to this network if you don't update. right? And I find so few people doing that.
Azure has good checks. GCP does have good checks. My husband does all Fed projects. Fed is really, really secure about that. But in some ways, it hinders them as well when we start talking about progress.
Yeah, it does. Well, speaking of progress, we've seen a decrease. I guess it's kind of a weird stat, right? Because we've seen more people have a plan for handling sensitive data. So this is a decrease from 35%. So a third of the people really had no good approach to handle sensitive data to now we're 1 in 7, 8. I forget how my math
So
works
maybe
there,
those emails and letters are making a difference, Steve.
maybe they are, right? Like, and honestly, so Mri, this might be an interesting one for you, right? Because I think you're regulated, you're in a bank, but I find in the U.S. most people are more concerned about reputational risks than regulatory risk. Is that something you guys think about?
Maybe true. That's very true. It's the trust. It's the customer's trust is the most, like the pinnacle of the trust that we need to earn, right? So otherwise, it's gone. So once trust is lost, it's very hard to build that up. So I think that's very true. People are not really scared of those fines, right? It's more about the reputation. So
yeah, and really that's what I've seen. Like people overseas, I think, are slightly more concerned about fines, but more and more I find the reputational risk is making a difference, which I think is a good thing.
It is
probably the best way to handle this. Yeah. All right. So let's maybe find some better news. Let's talk about multiple database platforms, which I think is your area for sure. So we've had this stat for a long time, right? 74% using more than one platforms, 26% using more than 4, which is which is I think normal, right? Like on one hand, we think 4 is a lot, but in any decent sized enterprise, you can imagine there's 4 different types of databases, probably 4 different types of OSs even. But there's been this trend that we've seen. No, this is just database platforms, right?
Well, the cloud has its own database platforms, though. We consider Azure SQL kind of different from SQL Server. Autonomous database is different than Oracle. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, some people might consider RDS the same as SQL Server, but certainly we've seen a lot of it. But this year we saw some contraction, right? That less people were trying to go towards more platforms, it seems like.
Now I see this data differently. I see that there's going to be customers that thought it was really kind of interesting, these open source products that might save them some money. And they may have tried to migrate some of their really large monolithic systems over to it, tried for a year or 2 years, and then reverted, realizing that they couldn't do it. This may have left a bad taste in their mouth. It's not that they won't embrace other database platforms in the upcoming years, but it may have resulted in these kind of number changes.
It certainly may be. Like I do think people had this idea of porting across database platforms, which I think you and I have talked about is almost never works, right? Like you really have to just start a new application, new system if you want to move to a new database platform, right? It's just too hard to move.
I was the receptor. I received hundreds of databases that failed in migration every year that I had to lift and shift in multiple cloud platforms. It was known for that because Oracle, especially with PL SQL, is very, very difficult. And you come to recognize how much is outside the database that also has to be migrated to the point that it cripples the actual migration project.
Yeah. And there's also this trend too that maybe some people have actually been able to move to clouds or something, so they've consolidated down to less platforms, right? So if I was half Azure SQL database, half on premises, and I got everything up into the cloud, or maybe I pulled everything back, maybe that's a sign of consolidating to less platforms. Mri, I assume you guys have multiple platforms at Navy Federal.
Yeah, we do. So we are I feel it's also like operational and manageability, right? So it's too hard if you go like really crazy with like 6, 7 platforms. And I think that's what people tried to do initially. I mean, like we all have been in that ship where we thought like, oh, okay, so I'm gonna go like I have this SaaS offering, PaaS offering, and you go crazy with things. But unfortunately, it doesn't like simplify your life. It just makes it more complicated. That's the real truth of things that you realize like, after a year, after 2 years, and then maybe I would never be able to like train my team, like upskill them to be in a situation where they can catch up with everything. And you're always running into resource constraint. Then you have these budget cuts and other things. So you try to lift and shift and consolidate your platforms just to make sure you can have, like breathing room so you can hire and like stay sustained at the same pace as your technology is growing. So I think that may be the reason. Could be also another reason what I'm thinking about.
Yeah, I would say there's a couple of them. Being the multi-platform DBA, many times my peers who are single platform were not interested in learning multi-platform. They didn't need the constant new challenges that I did. So I had that mindset that I was very interested in other database platforms. When someone would come to the IT or operations organization and say, so we've got this server that's been running under somebody's desk that's on this single platform and it now needs to go to the server room. It's your responsibility. I would take those on and I would learn Sybase, Informix, Foxborough. I mean, it didn't matter what it was. I was like, I'll do it. But there's not everybody who wants to do that or is comfortable doing that. And it's a lot. It takes a while for me to pivot, but I will absolutely say Oracle is my primary because every year somebody needed me for my Oracle expertise. You have to you can't be a total generalist. It just doesn't work that way.
Yeah, I agree. And I've been in that situation too, where I just kind of adopted new platforms. And I think, as you said, we see in the numbers that a lot of people, I think, did some expansion, or maybe they had those developers setting up databases under their desk and then they pulled back for probably all the reasons you say, but certainly some of it is that understanding, as you say, Kellyn, that do I have enough staff that's comfortable? I know I've seen that in the DevOps world with the CI/CDs, where every different team wants their own CI/CD platform. Eventually, a group realized we have 5 or 6, and we don't really have expertise in any of them. And it's hard. It's hard to switch, right? Like it is a challenge.
Which results in human error and failure in the systems. Yeah, it's a problem.
Yeah. And slows you down, right? Like just switching, right? Like you switch from T-SQL to PL-SQL to PG-SQL, right? Like your brain has to just slow down a little bit to be comfortable. So it's interesting. We have this stat as well that 1 in 5, right? A little more than 1 in 5 say they don't want to adopt more than one database type because they're concerned about security and compliance. Mri, is this something you think about? Do you have a process for adopting new technologies?
Yeah, we do have like, like most of the companies do have this kind of setup, I guess. You go through something called as architectural review board where you review with your architects and like do that assessment whether the company can adopt this technology, or do I have resources? Do I have, like you're justifying that. So one reason why people are not able to adopt different technology was because of the resources on hand, right? So I have certain number of people. I cannot onboard like 20 other people to deliver this project because at the end of the day, it's the ROI. It doesn't make sense. So how can we like also like compliance issues, right? So you can't just like jump the ship every time. So there's a lot of other things, the security side of house that you need to take care of. So I think it's a mix of things.
Yeah.
I find this slide.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, Steve, I find this slide kind of funny for me in my history. So often I was hired, we just need you for your Oracle DBA skills. We're hiring you for Oracle. It's great that you know that other stuff. We don't care. And within 6 weeks, we would find something mission critical running on another platform. It could be their POS system, their shipping system, something they didn't even realize had a database underneath it. And until it broke, it wasn't deemed necessary to have a DBA over. And all of a sudden, I was their multi-platform DBA again.
Yeah.
Just saying.
I mean, I think, that's the challenge that a lot of people find, that it seems like it's so easy to adopt technology, but it's hard to do it well, and end up just reaching out for whoever can do it. I mean, I know I saw similar things at JD Edwards where I was mostly the SQL Server expert, but I realized we really didn't have like DB2 and Oracle experts in operations. It's like, this is crazy.
Yeah.
You know, that we are definitely, I don't know about compliance.
Who owns it now?
Yeah, exactly right.
Who owns JD Edwards now?
Oh, Oracle.
Just saying, this stuff happens, and all of a sudden they're like, we're pivoting to another database platform is going to be our primary. I know how many JD Edwards systems I came into, and I'd always have to come in and go, so is this SQL Server or Oracle? I just want to start the conversation there. I need to know.
Yeah. Or DB2, right? We have a ton of DB2.
Or DB2, you know. Yeah, but it would be PL SQL, so I'd be all right. So with that in mind, so we have some research that talked about the four most popular database platforms. Kellyn, I know you've seen the slide. Mri, any guesses in the last 2 years which platforms are being introduced at most companies?
I think SQL Server would be there, definitely on the list, I'm guessing. I'm not sure, but I'm a SQL advocate, so I like SQL Server. That was my bread and butter, just like you, Steve. So though I like Oracle, I think Oracle too, maybe they're trending up. There could be a couple of NoSQL technologies, I'm guessing. So yeah, we'll see.
Yeah. So it's an interesting list, right? So I know I hear Postgres a lot at different companies. I think a lot of people are interested in moving to Postgres. I know, Kellyn, you've heard a lot of people talk about this in your travels over the last few years as well.
Everyone I mentor, no matter which side they're on, SQL Server or doesn't matter, I'm like, you need to learn Postgres. MySQL, I'm going to say no. It kind of comes to you pretty easy and it's low maintenance, but Postgres, you need to learn.
Yeah. I thought that was, I'm not surprised by Postgres. I'm a little surprised by MySQL because I thought I wouldn't expect most organizations to be introducing it at this point.
It comes packaged. Most often it's like PHP admin. It just all comes together. There you go.
Yeah. I am a little surprised with Mongo still being so strong. Felt like there was a huge wave a decade ago. And I don't hear it that much as I talk to large organizations.
I do.
Snowflake.
Snowflake is big because that's that analytics platform. For MongoDB, I'm hearing from some of my folks and many that I mentor that come back and say, my organization is looking for a new database platform and I have to investigate MongoDB. MongoDB, even though it's a document database, is being promoted to take over the transactional workloads as well. And that's very interesting to me. It isn't actually winning in the end, or it may be used just for its document database properties in the end, but it is being introduced as an answer to it all, that it'll be able to handle documents as well as transactional systems.
I feel you, Kellyn. We had a use case like that in my previous place where we switched to Mongo because of that. They're very good at selling it though, so
they are.
I give it to them. So yeah,
marketing. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think Postgres comes as no surprise, right? Like even last few years, even in past, that was like very popular. Yeah. So and I think Redgate has their own Postgres advocate as well. So yeah.
Ryan. Yeah, we love Ryan. Yeah. And Grant's doing it too.
Oh.
Grant's doing it too. They just wrote a book actually. Yeah. All right. So if they are introducing these new platforms, we've certainly seen all these challenges in the report that we've talked a little bit about data security. People certainly worry about that. Skill sets we've talked about for sure. Data integration is definitely a challenge. If I'm doing multiple platforms, so often I don't keep the data just in that one platform. I have to ETL it or mirror it or migrate or do something else. And then certainly the administrative or operational burden as well. Kellyn, do you see a lot of people struggling with these last two, the data integration and monitoring piece?
The data integration one is really complex. I have a number of big customers that I worked with that were doing multi-cloud implementations with data integration. Some of them were trying to move 7 terabytes of data in a single day with ETL. It did not work well. We had to rewrite everything. Some of them could go down to like from 7 terabytes down to 20 gigs. Once you rewrote the SQL. So everybody optimize your SQL, optimize. It's very important. But this was a big challenge. All of a sudden, everything broke once they migrated to their cloud platforms.
Yeah. And I see that. Well, I see there's some really neat replication technologies out there, but they're a bunch of work and you have to watch, data types and, all the movement stuff because you can easily have it get out of control.
And if there's a network, the network is our last bottleneck for a lot of this. And even if they are efficient, the network is not, and you end up with slow performance. Yeah.
Sure. And then in the monitoring front, I think a big reason why we hired Kellyn at Redgate is that we're hearing this demand from our customers that they want to monitor all their databases in one place. So Kellyn, you've been doing a lot of work on Redgate Monitor, trying to help them add Oracle support, right? Because it is a challenge.
It is. It's a complete different ball game. And what's important to us when we're talking about different database platforms, I'm also looking at, of course, MongoDB, MySQL, as we start to investigate some of those, as well as the benefits of bringing in like AI into that. That's a whole nother ball game. But these challenges is each of these database platforms have different requirements and what's important and what's going to be an actual weight. I mean, that's huge. Troubleshooting, if you're having that learning challenge of how do I troubleshoot this problem in Oracle versus this problem in SQL Server versus this problem in MySQL, it's going to be a complete different ballgame.
Yeah, and you can see from the numbers here that these are the percentages of people that find these to be challenges. So it's a significant number in many of these cases, right? Over half people in some cases. All right. Let's move on, as I don't want to run out of time here. Let's talk a little bit about skills, because these are big challenges. The number one challenge a lot of people say is just getting their staff trained up, or maybe even, Kellyn, to your point, being comfortable being trained. It was interesting to me that 44% of the professionals want some sort of cadence for training. Maria, is this the kind of thing you see in your organization or with your peers?
Yeah, definitely. Training is one of the biggest thing that we always invest in, because that's the biggest way to. And in fact, I've been working, especially this year, to get my people certified. It's not just because it's good on your resume, but it helps you at least have the basic knowledge to handle new technology. We did this even in my previous arcs. It's been bread and butter. So
yeah. So this is almost half want to be trained. Do you see that? Do you see most of your staff, less than half? Is it challenging to get some people?
I would say about 50% of people are very interested to gain new skills. They come say hey, okay, now Fabric is out, right? So everybody wants to get trained on Fabric, right? SQL Warehouse was the old technology, and then that became Synapse, and now Fabric. So everybody wants to get certified in Fabric. I don't know if that would be the technology we'll go forward with, right? So that's the thing. And we have a lot of Databricks, so that's the other thing. So, and especially with Databricks, they have their AI offering, so people want to leverage that. It's pretty cool. So those are some of the areas that that are very people are really interested. That's the thing. So that's a good thing.
Yeah, and Fabric's not just one technology. That's a lot of training. I mean, I know when I was trying to connect a SQL Server database into Fabric, I found 7 different ways to actually do it. And all of them, I had to learn something new as I figured out how to do it through ADF, how to do it through endpoints with infrastructure. That's a lot to understand and learn.
Yeah.
It is. It is. So if we think about this, right, what are our challenges trying to learn all these things? Most people say lack of time. I think we all feel that pressure that we've got a ton of work to do, and we may have commitments outside of work.
Yeah.
But then there's the investment as well and the availability of the training. Maria, these are the kinds of things you see, or how do you address some of these issues?
Yeah, lack of time is a good thing for everyone. I guess that's a very common thing that people face. Because especially if you're supporting multiple projects, right? So you have project deliveries to handle, and then you have these certifications, which are also like time-bound development skills that you need to do within a year or something, right? And the technology is growing so rapidly that by the time it happened with me, right? So by the time I got the certification, there's a new thing out there already. So my certification is already stale. So I need to go back and reskill myself. So I think that is the biggest challenge. But, like when you're coding, I think with help of these AI-enabled tools like GitHub Copilot and stuff, so the code reusability and like writing skills have improved a little bit. I do see that. So hoping like we can leverage those technologies so that can give us some time back and we can invest on this. But yeah, and I think financial support too, right? Like the organization always thinks about like, where do we want to invest? I rather want to train people who are going to work on that skills already, or they are working in that technology, rather than bringing somebody new, which I don't know whether that engineer is going to work on this project, right? So I think that's the thing that you find across organizations. Yeah.
How about you, Kellyn? What do you think about these reasons where people struggle to learn more?
We're expecting people to do more with less. And I think that idea that you have less time to do this makes sense to me. Where you may have had a team of 4 DBAs, you may be down to 2. So you're expected to do more, and you're expected to learn more platforms. All of this starts to stack up together. The other challenge is people say, well, AI can help you. If you don't know what you're asking of AI, you're going to end up with a lot of hallucinations, a lot of mistakes. You're not going to set that prompt up right. And I think it also lends to people that may be more senior level that are able to take advantage of that than those that may be learning. And I don't think leadership has really embraced that understanding. So you end up with folks that are maybe facing something that may not have been addressed here in this question, that I think will become more and more of a barrier as we go on in the years.
Yeah, I mean, we'll certainly get to the AI thing. I mean, to me, those numbers look a little funny. Like the time, I think, is true, but I also know the people that answer the survey sometimes are a little more motivated in their careers. I find so many people that I meet in different places, they don't want to make an investment in themselves. They don't want to do anything outside of work, and they're not motivated to learn more. Like,
are you pointing at my Oracle people that just want to retire? Is that
not even retire, but right? But there's people like that they're comfortable in Oracle or SQL Server. They're comfortable being a developer of reports or a DBA managing systems, and they don't want to learn about the cloud. They don't want to learn about AI, or they don't want to learn about some new replication thing. Right? Like, I think a lot of times, people are not as motivated as I would hope to grow their careers.
Well, people learn mainframe and they live their entire life, right? So
I've come across an interesting split, though, too, Steve, where I've got an Oracle folks that know how Oracle internals work and on-premise, and those that only know how Oracle Cloud works. And there's no interaction between the two. Yeah,
like it's just interesting to me. Like I think about, doctors and lawyers and accountants and engineers have professional education requirements every year that they are learning more. Chefs practice new recipes, they try to do new things, and I'm sometimes disappointed that I don't see 80 or 90% of technologists trying to grow and learn more. So like the 15% personal reasons, I assume maybe that's caring for a loved one or some sort of other issue, but I just don't see motivation sometimes, which doesn't show up here as a barrier. So anyways, do better, people, if you're listening. All right. So you guys you've both mentioned AI and cloud a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about this. So there's this issue with security, right? People are worried about it and thinking about it. 69% of the respondents said they plan on adopting AI in some way, but almost as many are a little bit worried about privacy and data concerns using AI. Is this the kind of thing you think about as well, or what things do you think you're worried about if you adopt AI, right? Certainly there's the hallucination, understanding what the AI is giving you. Are we concerned about other stuff?
I think that is the biggest thing. We don't know how the hallucination, right? So that I think that's the biggest thing. How do you know that this is true, right? So what's the what's the way or verification that this is true? And of course, the data privacy, right? Like with DeepSeek and everything, like that's I think that's biggest concerns, because there's no form of regulations right now in place as well, like the government. And so it's like a free world right now. So I think till then, some of the companies in medical or like, fintech, they would be like, they would adopt, they may be okay for their devs to use like GitHub Copilot or stuff like that, which can help with the programming. But like having their own LLM models, like some of them are doing right. It's not like they are not, but it's like it's a mixed bag of things. And I think everybody is like having their own center of excellence established for AI adoption, and then they are coming up with their own pillars of adoption based on the company's metrics or how they want to grow. I see that happening across arcs. I don't know if you guys see that happening too. So yeah.
AI is definitely a mixed bag. Yeah. One, the black box of it all, as you were just talking about, Mri, is that you don't know what's going on behind the scenes. Yeah. And there were a lot of folks that I worked with on AI projects before I joined Redgate that I realized many times they were poisoning their own data models because they didn't understand how AI functioned, especially in the development life cycle. They would have John Doe in development, and then by the time AI had learned from that and got to production, it's going, where's John Doe? John Doe is fake. Well, but I have John Doe. I know John Doe exists. And you realize they poisoned their own models. You also had the challenge of folks not understanding, having large language models that were completely secured and private versus public large language models. And they'd be like, we just fed all of our leasing data there. No, don't do that. Do you know how much information's in that? Please don't do this. Yeah. The lack of comprehension of what AI is, that everybody had an AI directive for 2023 and 2024, and were trying to push it into their product, even though they didn't really understand what it was. This year, we're going to see a huge flood of AI agents. You have to do something. You can't just do a reg process. You have to do an action at the end of it. And yet you have to ask, does it really need to do something? And is it a good idea? Nobody asks those questions they probably should follow up with.
For sure. To me, I turn it around a little bit. Like the more I use AI, the more I think, how is this different from me dealing with a less experienced person I work with, right? Another human. Yeah. Because when humans tell you things, how do you know it's true? You've built some sort of trust, but right, we get bad information all the time from different sources.
And where is AI learning from?
Where is AI learning? Right? That's the same thing with humans, right? Like AI certainly is a computer technology that can work at scale, so it can make mistakes faster than humans or do things better than humans. But a lot of the same concerns come about with poorly trained staff or turnover staff, all those things that we deal with already. So I'm not saying I love it or it's great. It's going to solve problems or it's going to wreck everything. It's just, in some sense, it's just dealing with a lot more humans that just work faster. Right?
Yeah.
What's interesting is in the survey, we don't have it on here, 84% of the people using it say they're getting benefit from it, which is an interesting thing. And I don't know if I'm at 84%. Like sometimes it helps me, sometimes it doesn't. So I can't decide.
But AI is so broad. If you're getting some benefit from it, I mean, it's a positive. But when you start looking at it, it's such a broad topic. It's really hard to define what is positive and what they may not be getting good benefit.
That's true, right?
And
Like,
also,
I think when I ask questions of LLMs, it's a very mixed bag. But in terms of like all my photos, like, you know, Google or Amazon or anybody detects the people in my photos and knows who they are, and that's amazing. Right? Amazing use of a subset of AI technology.
My sister and I
new, right? Like AI is not new. That's the thing. It's been existing from 1960s. The only thing is like the Gen AI is the stuff which is like nerve-wracking and fun. So I think people need to understand ML was existing, AI was existing. It's the Gen AI which we are talking about. Like, and now everything is backed as AI, so it's kind of getting a little confusing because LLMs are not new. Like, people had them for a long time.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, with that, let's go to another confusing term as well, the cloud, right? Because the cloud is many things. So 61%, right? Almost 2/3 of the people working in the cloud plan to invest more in security because, right, they obviously know that. I thought this was interesting that 26% plan to reduce cloud usage, which I've kind of been waiting for. I've kind of thought that the cloud isn't for everybody. It doesn't always make sense. And I think for this other statistic, cost management is a huge challenge in the cloud. I know, like at Redgate, I know, Kellyn, you're struggling with this slightly, trying to just get access to cloud technologies, and we're very careful on the cost. And this is something we see in other organizations. I'm sure, Kellyn, you see this as you work with customers as well, that some of them want to do more, some want to do less.
Well, for the cloud to be, as I say, infinitely scalable, each resource has throttling on it. It's to make sure nobody is the noisy neighbor. This can add up and be a challenge. And so you might end up with your largest systems not being able to migrate to the cloud. You might be able to, you know, get somewhat performance for it, but really it's for those just average databases or the smaller databases, especially when you talk about PaaS and SaaS. And when you get to those very large databases or those high resource systems, you're going to need to build something that's more infrastructure focused. And that may go against to what your organizations thought they were going to get when they went to the cloud. And that can leave a bad taste in their mouth and make them revert back to on-premises.
Yeah. And I think you see more of that because you work with large systems. Mri, do you guys are you pro cloud? Are you pulling away from the cloud?
I wouldn't say we are pulling away from cloud. I think we are being very conscious about where we invest in cloud. I think not all cloud is not an answer right now. Most of the companies are going hybrid. I think that's where things are. So I feel like a lot of companies who went all cloud did come back, and now they're maintaining a hybrid. So yeah. I think the trend is like cost, right? So it can get extremely expensive to have everything in cloud, especially if you're running like terabytes of data. So and you need to reconsider the hard data and cold data. You know, like I think people need to have better warehousing systems and how they manage their data. And I have seen some of the ARCs go all the way in, and then they realize like I'm paying too much. So I think that's what it is. We're being very conscious about where the investments are.
Yeah, one of the things here, Steve, this says 26% plan to reduce cloud usage due to security concerns. Now, we talked about that, you know, performing security in a very, you know, robust way in the cloud is challenging because you need to know what is required. Mm-hmm. But I usually find most customers are pulling back because of cost. Cost optimization exercises were a normal thing when I was at Microsoft. That was usually what I was brought in for. And the other thing was that we were hearing that they could run these big databases and they'd migrate them and do some sample workloads and it looked good. And then they'd migrate the full workloads and everything would fail. They couldn't meet the requirements they needed, and that's why they would revert back.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's true, right? But I think that those really large workloads, that's a very small percentage of stuff, right? When you think about all
But
the
it's the
tools
most
out there. So
important usually too.
it is the most important, right? And it's arguably it's the one that you need the most control. So it wouldn't be a good cloud thing, anyways. I, I do. I think cost is certainly a concern. I think there's a lot of people that are trying to decide, is the capex opex difference worth some of the other cost structures that go in place? Because I do have some customers that found the cloud to be less expensive for them. Like, it has worked out well, but they're very
Really?
careful about what they've done. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think the initial cost investment is smaller than if you bought into a data center, but the long-term cost for the cloud is going to be more. I think it's the greatest marketing myth that ever has come out, is saying you're going to go to the cloud and you're going to save money. That's how I feel about it. I always have.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's in general. I will say there's some though that closed their on-premise data centers and they found it to be cheaper because of
Interesting.
the constant investment in the data center as well as the staffing. They found the cloud to be better. Right now, some of that is they probably have adjusted some of their performance expectations too, right? And they run a little leaner, knowing that the cloud, they have to be careful in the cloud, right? They can't just have people buying extra servers and sticking them up there. So they do manage who is allowed to provision out things pretty well. But certainly, I think both cost and security are big deals.
I think it's still a
All right.
very attractive offer for anybody who is a small shop, like it's a startup or a thing.
Yes.
It's still
Yeah.
very attractive and it's still very cheaper and leaner for those things. If you're
I agree
talking about,
that.
yeah.
Yeah.
So that way it is still a very cost-effective option.
And there's a lot of agility, right? Like, even still, like, organizations I talk to that think that they're progressive, like getting them to allocate out, a bunch of new VMs and security groups and stuff takes days, if not weeks, often, right? Like, agility is a big factor.
Yeah, and the autonomy it gives for small enterprise, it's huge. So I can't argue on that. So yeah.
Yeah. But you have to be able to take advantage of agility. If you're kind of a stodgy organization and you're slow to move on things, I'm not sure the cloud is helpful.
Yeah.
In any case, we're getting near the end. Let me just recap. The whole report is out there. The big themes we found this year: security is on everybody's mind. Multiple database platforms or cross databases is certainly an issue. The skills gap in professional development, and of course, AI in the cloud are out there as well. You can download the full report right now at redgate.com/database landscape 25. You can get a PDF of this thing and look through, all kinds of data and conclusions that we put in there, things to look at. So take a look at it, spread it around to your friends, and see what you think. We've barely touched on in there, but we'll do some other webinars in the future looking at different aspects of this. So interesting. There's a few questions. There's a bunch of technical questions, which I think. So let me start with one of these. I think is interesting. So Leon says he thinks the cross database platform is mostly pushed by developers and they lean towards open source. Is that, Mri, is that your experience, or Kellyn, what do you think when you work with people?
I think it's absolutely pushed by developers, where there was a certain period when we were on premise and DBAs kind of made that decision. We are a single platform. We work with Oracle, or we are a SQL Server shop. That has changed, where developers are able to make that decision, go, well, a database is just a database. I'm just storing data in it. My SQL will do fine today. SQLite will do fine. Or, it's not usually those enterprise databases that they're going to have to go through and actually get a purchase order for and actually do licensing. That makes it a lot easier for them to just move forward and start developing.
Mri, same for you? Are your developers pushing different platforms?
Yep. It's all the devs, right? So what technology, we want to keep them happy. So at the end of the day, so it also makes sense, right? So
yeah, I think that's what I've seen too, is that developers want to try something new and shiny, or they think that moving to a document database solves all their schema problems. So we get this proliferation that, just like Kellyn, you say those proof of concepts don't work when you get a full workload. I think some of those platforms don't work when you really stress them out as well. So another interesting one, John says there's a push to migrate to online database platforms. Is there a best practice in migrating SQL Server, Oracle, whatever, to something like AWS or Azure?
I can
Maybe
answer
Kellyn,
that on the Oracle side easily. Pull your AWR reports, grab a 1 week workload, find out what your throughput is. You can do that with 12 data points. It's even out on my GitHub for DBA Kevlar. You can calculate it into an Excel spreadsheet, know exactly what you need for IO, memory, CPU. You then go to any one of those services, PaaS, SaaS, any of that. Find out, you do this for Azure. Azure's really good for this. Google's really good for this. I don't know AWS as well, so I apologize. But if you look up that service and look up the word limits or quota, find out what their limits are. Even when we start talking about like, I'm going to pick on Cosmos DB. I'm so sorry, guys. There's this term hyperscale. And I'd laugh at it because it was 300 megs per second per 16 terabits. Start calculating that. If you're taking a workload off of an Oracle Exadata that's doing 37,000 megs per second, it ain't going to go far. So I would feel this pain where I would have to calculate this and go, you can't migrate this onto this other service or this PaaS database. So absolutely find out what the quotas are, find out how much you're going to have to scale, because people, when they're talking to you about this, and I'm not making fun of sales or anything else like this, their job is to give you these options. Your job is to know what options you can take. Find out what you need, calculate it. The more you know, the better you're off.
Yeah, I would say, same thing. Like, you got to test and understand limits. And if you don't want to push those limits in the cloud because there's nowhere to go. On premise, sometimes you can play with that stuff, but in the cloud, you're stuck. There are well-architected frameworks that so few people actually use if they're going to migrate an application, because when you migrate a database, you're not usually migrating just a database. There's a bunch of stuff that moves. So you have to think about outside the database as well.
And
what else?
Steve,
go ahead, Cal.
WAF is very well-architected framework, is very Azure-oriented. There are terms like that for maximum availability architecture for Oracle. AWS has their term for it as well. Definitely find out what it is. I know I had to write a number of WAFs even after I left Microsoft. So they are good to find those, because they will tell you what your limits are and what you should be architecting to meet security as well as performance requirements. Yeah.
And I can't remember the term in AWS either, but well-architected framework is the Microsoft Azure term. So another interesting question: are there trending certifications that mirror the trending database types, or specific certifications you recommend? So Mri, maybe this is for you. Like, what types of certifications is your staff pursuing?
I mean, it depends on the level they are, right? I can't just say hey, this is great for everyone. Like, you can't become a solution architect unless and until you have the basics. I think you can start. You can go to Microsoft Learn or anything if you're pursuing the course, and select the levels. Hey, you have professional, you have beginner, you have. And go for that, and then do that. Even AWS offers the same kind of setting.
But those are free learning, right, Marie? Yeah. You can do the free learning first before you invest in the certification.
Exactly. And Microsoft has their own learn path, you can pick a path and then do. And if you have plural site, you can customize it too. Hey, I want to be an architect, solution architect, and it picks up the courses for you. It's kind of cool. And I was playing with it, and then especially with Fabric out, because I want to learn Fabric, and it was kind of telling, oh, okay, so you need to do this course and then this one, and then the self path is very very guidance oriented. It's very cool.
LinkedIn Learning also has a lot of Microsoft as well as other platform classes. I know I did an Oracle 23 AI one for them. And some of them are small, some are large. I mean, I did 10 hours of content for one class. So there's a lot out there. But that's one other flavor that I see a lot of the Microsoft people going out there and doing courses as well.
And
Yeah.
you can also get access to like Cloud Guru and stuff, set up your own cloud lab and like do hands-on. It's been very helpful for me, especially, like being in management, I don't necessarily have access to. So sometimes I want to like stimulate the scenarios to understand, I'm very technical. I do like read most of the application logs and stuff, find out the issues and like debug and everything. So, but it's what it is. So you can pick and choose based on what you want. And they do have like streams for managers. If you're a manager, if you want to understand what your technical staff is doing, you do have those certifications. So,
yeah, I would say, technology in which you're interested or working in, looking for a certification, really any certification is good because it drives your learning, gives you a path and kind of a framework in which to go. We do this, 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 and this. And I think when I've looked for jobs or interviewed, a lot of times it's less the certification as it is what I've learned along the way and how I did it that makes the difference to the next managers. So, I encourage certifications for that reason, not to just put letters after your name. Right? Actually practice, as Mri said, get a lab set up, work on it, learn some things. It makes a huge difference. So, all right, I think we're about at time here. In the browser, you should see some links. You can download the report. You can, there's a link to Simple Talk, and I don't know what the other one is, but feel free to click on those, pass them along to your friends as well. We did record this, so it'll be available if you want to rewatch it or send it to somebody else, let them see it. And then there were a couple minor questions there. Sorry we didn't get to them. We're just kind of out of time. But Mri, Kellyn, thank you very much for joining. Hopefully you enjoyed it. And
Thank you.
Hopefully I'll see you both soon. I'll see you, Kellyn, in a few hours, I think.
Yeah. In the cold.
All right. In the cold. So everybody enjoy yourself. Stay warm if you're in the Northern Hemisphere. Enjoy summer if you're in the Southern Hemisphere. And hopefully we'll see you at an event soon. Thanks for coming. Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Bye now.